Okay.
Cool. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
It's good. Tired. Had a lot of schoolwork today that I'm still not done with.
Yeah. It's finals week for me, so like I just
Yeah.
can't wait for this to be over.
Finals, really?
Oh, like not finals, but like
Or
it's
like
the end of
test
our,
week?
our quarter.
Mm. Your school in person yet?
It's like half in person, but I think like 2 or 3 people go per period. So
Oh, okay.
how about you?
Oh yeah, I'm up in Boston, near Boston, so we're all back in person in a week. So
Oh my gosh.
I don't even know why, like just so sudden, but we'll see.
For sure. I mean, there's only like 1 quarter left. Like I understand like people want to
Mm.
go back, but I don't know if it would help really like academically. Like you have
Yeah.
1 quarter left.
Let me just send out tweet we're live or something real quick.
Okay.
Oh, that might have made your computer go off.
Yeah. Let me shut down. Gosh.
Okay, we can get started in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so hi everyone. This slide is just our socials. These boot camps are run by Bit Project, which is a super cool organization that Fifi and I are working for. Um, we'll introduce a bit more about it in the future slides. If you want to continue.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about one of our specific camps called Building Slack Apps. And today's going to be kind of a culmination of everything we've taught our students, as well as looking at a really great project that one of them built. So a little introduction. My name is Fifi, and I'm one of the instructors for the camp.
Hi, I'm Bo. I'm the other student mentor for the camp.
Yeah. So you might be wondering what Bit Project is. It's basically an organization that was formed a couple of years ago with the goal of working together with students in order to learn coding. We offer a bunch of different programs that help a lot of students build their skills through awesome projects and also learn from and network with seasoned engineers and professionals in the industry. Additionally, you get to take everything that you've learned and help your community as well.
Yeah, so now that you know a bit about what Bit Project is, you guys probably have heard of Slack if you work in the tech field or interested in it. So super cool company. We're so lucky we got to partner with them, and we got to teach students from around the country JavaScript, and specifically how to make Slack apps. And specifically, this cohort got to work with a bunch of software engineers, developer advocates, program managers to actually learn and create their own projects. So super lucky to work with them. Yeah, so this is just a quick summary of the curriculum. So week one, we really started really basic, which is giving people an introduction to the API, talking about the Bolt framework, which is what students use to make Slack apps, and then we gave students some time to actually create their own Slack app.
In week two, we learned about shortcuts and modals. This was an introduction to Block Kit, which is a very foundational concept when building Slack apps. And we also integrated this with learning about modals and views. And in this week, the final project was to create a polling app that uses a view and a modal.
Yeah, in week 3, we introduced the first third-party API, which is the Google Translate API. So students got to use a couple more event listeners, like emoji reactions, and actually created a translation bot that could translate from language to language.
And in the last week, we introduced webhooks through the GitHub API. So we focused on using frameworks such as Express in order to access information from really useful sites. And then we focused on also helping students learn to build apps using GitHub webhooks and post messages when an event occurs. So now we're just going to get into demonstrating the awesome project that one of our students, Rebecca, built.
I think we have to bring Rebecca on. There we go. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well.
Awesome. Can't wait to see your project.
Can you see it in full screen now?
Yep, take it away.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rebecca. So before talking about my Slack project, let me introduce a little bit about myself. I'm a junior studying computer science at New York University. And in my free time, I like to code, and I actually have a lot of experience working with Node.js, with other frameworks like React and Express. So this project was really fun for me to learn because I already knew a little bit about Node.js. And in my free time, I also like to make art. And then the reason why I joined this course for Slack apps, Bit project, is because I thought that virtual communication is becoming increasingly important, especially during quarantine. And it was just really fun to see how developers think of ideas to facilitate communication, especially when we rely so much on virtual communication. So a little bit about my app. It's actually pretty simple and straightforward. The idea is just to display a list of to do tasks in the app home. So in Slack, like if you click on the app home, if you click on the app, there are two sections. One is app home and the other one is messages, where the bot can send you messages. But app home is like a little bit like a regular software, but just in the Slack app itself. So the idea of the app is not making any like groundbreaking software that increase productivity, because there's a lot of apps out there that already do that. Like um, some stuff that we're already familiar with is like Google Calendar, or like other task management sites like Trello. But the goal is not to make an entirely different app that helps with our productivity. The goal is just to stay within the Slack framework itself, and then to make something simple that we can use, so that when we want to check what tasks do I have today, or if I have a meeting coming up, I don't have to switch out of the Slack app, and I can just check directly. So yeah, let's get on to how I built the app. And this is the flowchart of how I designed the app. So Slack apps are actually really event driven. So everything starts when basically start with like a user action. So how my app is triggered basically is when a user opens the app home, and then that's where everything starts. And then how I designed the app is I thought of what the app would do like once the user opens the app home. So the app, my Slack app, fetches from my database, and then from the database, it would get like a list of data, which and then we transform the data somehow, and then push it onto the current view. And then this view would include like a header that welcomes the user, which is pretty standard for Slack apps. And it will also display the list of tasks, which is the main purpose of our app. And then on this app home, we're also we're also intending to create we also should allow users to create new tasks. And then after the user create the new task, we should be able to store it. So that's how I designed the app. And this is the overall big high level look at it. And then this may be a really silly question, but we really got to figure out what is a task before we build an app centered around tasks. So I wanted my app to be pretty bearable and simple and very intuitive for users to understand. So like how I define that a task is just like the name of the task. And it doesn't have to be like something simple. You can write like a description, a little bit more detailed description to see like what the task actually is. And then of course, date and time is really important so that you can see like when it's going on. And then also to ask something fun, I wanted to ask like a priority level for the task, which may be a little bit non-traditional. And then I use different emojis like to represent the priority. So for example, a red square represents an urgent task versus an orange square represents important task. And then yellow square represents like medium priority versus green represents low. So this is just a fun way for me to like add something to a task or event that everything knows about, but sort of a custom functionality of this app. And then how we will create a task is with a modal. So when a user clicks on the button, a modal will come up, and then the user can customize everything here and then click the create button. And then when it comes to designing the app, another question, really important question that I ask myself is how am I going to store the data? Because when we're learning about making Slack apps, we actually use this utility called ngrok, and it basically creates a tunnel that lets the Slack, like our app, and then the Slack API communicate. But the problem with that is that expires after an hour, so that's not really scalable. Like it's fine for me to run the app every single time I open it, like during the development stage, but that's not really sustainable. So we want to be able to host it, and then we also want our data to be persistent. So if the user creates a task one time and then they exit out of the Slack app, we want them to be able to like see it again. So that's another issue that I needed to think about before I started creating this app. And then the final issue is hosting the app. So yeah. Now let's get on to how I actually figure out solutions for these problems I raised earlier. So for the database, I thought about using AWS or Google Cloud, but I actually like stumbled upon this like really simple JSON like pseudo database because it's just a node library called Node.json.db. And as the name suggests, it's like a node library that uses JSON as a JSON files as like a very simple database. If you don't know what JSON is, it's JavaScript object notation. So basically, it's like a JavaScript object-like format, and then you just store everything into those JSON files. And then here's an example of what a database looks like. It's just a JSON file. And then at the top, we have an object that's the name of the object is the user's ID. So under that, we have the data array, which will be an array of JavaScript array of objects. And then in this object, we will store like each task, like the name of the task, the priority, the date, and then time includes the start time and the end time. And then how we integrate the data is actually also really simple. We just require the package, and then we initialize the database called taskdb. And then every single time we want to get the data, it's really easy. We just call get data, and then we put in the user's ID to get an array of data. And then if we want to add new data into the array, we just use db.push. So it's very simple, and it's in my opinion, it's way more easy to integrate than other like cloud computation platforms. So it just really allows me to focus on the functionality, the core functionality of the Slack app, rather than spending a lot of time like integrating with other platforms. And then after talking about how the database works, I actually created this a diagram to represent the life cycle of my Slack app, just to show you like in a more visual way of what's going on. So everything starts when a user clicks the app, and that triggers the event app home opened. So then when this happens, it fetches the data from our JSON database. And then after it gets the data, it transforms the data into like a user readable format, and then it displays the data. So the app calls client.view.publish. So it pushes the data onto the user's view. And then it has like this welcome header, and it also has a button that lets the user to create a new task. So when the user click on the button that says create a new task, it triggers the action create task. So this is when the model I showed earlier pops up, where the user can enter all the information of the task, and then when the user hits create to like submit the model, how we gets the data is via like app.view. So we get the data through the Modals callback ID create task view. So then after we get the data, we stores it into the JSON database. So the next time when we open the app home again, we can see the task that we just created. So yeah, here's what it looks like. We have the header, we have the button, and then we have a list of tasks. And then here's a little bit more about the code. As I said before, everything gets triggered when the app home is open. So then it pushes onto these like a text that says welcome home, and also a button. And then after the home is opened, it gets the data from our database, and then it pushes the data, it transforms the data with this function, and then we basically transform the data from our database into like a format. So with like into a text format, so with like new lines, and then we can also like transform the date to make it like more human readable. And then we push everything onto the blocks that will be displayed in the user's app home. And then here's just more code of how we're transforming the text from the original data and then making it into like different sections, which is part of a type of like the Blockit UI that you can use. So finally, client.views.publish is called. So then the blocks that we created earlier, we just append it to the view that the user is going to see. And then, so what I said earlier, basically create the view and app home. And then, so another key function of the app is creating a new task. So this is, so with that, we're using a modal, which looks like this here. And then here is just a syntax of creating a modal with Slack's Blockit. And a little bit about Blockit, it's just a UI kit that allows like Slack developers to customize UI without like writing their own code. So for example, if I want to create a menu, I don't need to like write styling and a menu like logic from scratch. I just use a type of input called static select, which let me plugs in like values such as like high priority, urgent priority, medium priority, or low priority. So yeah, it's really simple to create a modal with the block kit. And then finally, after the user submits the modal, we get all the data here. So we just access it through view.state.values, and here's everything we get from the modal. And then with that, we can just create a new task and then push it into our database. So yeah, that was basically the life cycle of the core functions of my app, including opening the app home and then creating a new task and then processing that data to push it onto the database. And now let's talk about deploying the app. As I said earlier, when we learned in our Slack apps like Bitcamp, we didn't really learn about how to host the app. So the platform I actually chose was Heroku, which actually makes everything super simple. All I need to do is download their command line tools. And because I had a Git repository already, I just needed to create a remote, add Heroku as a Git remote. And then I needed to add this proc file to tell like Heroku where to like how to run my app basically. And I just push everything onto Heroku, and then yeah, so now the app is live. And then finally, I just needed to change the URL where like how so the URL, this URL is basically how the Slack API interacts with my app. So it sends like payloads to this URL. So it used to be the ngrok URL, and now I just change it to the Heroku web URL. So yeah, that's how I built my app. And now let's talk about some of the challenges I faced. So if you're familiar with Node.js, you will know that like manipulating date strings is kind of annoying. So it can just be really unpredictable. Like to get the current time, you would call date.now, which returns a string like the yellow string here. But that string is like not a directly like consumable format, so it doesn't tell you like, oh, today's March 25th. So then if you try to convert, you can actually build a date object with the string, which is this nice format as a purple string here. But that is not a string, actually. That is a date object. So you can't directly manipulate it and get a date and time from it. Like you can't just slice this part of the string and then get the date. So how I solve this problem is using a node library called moment.js. And it's really simple. I just call moment to get the current time as a moment object. And then when I call format, it formatted into the moment object into a nice readable string. So here's what a string looks like. This is when it was March 24th, and it's really easy to see. And then it returns the time in military time, which is not a problem. It's really easy to converse. So here's how I use the date. I could just pass it into the Slack date and time picker. And another challenge I face with building the Slack app is that while Blockheads is a really great tool to make UIs more streamlined, which I get is really important because Slack is used in a professional setting. So it will make sense for Slack to want all the Slack apps to have a uniform look. But it also makes the UI hard to customize because everything is like already made. So how I try to make my UI more engaging is just try to use bold text to highlight important information, and also use emojis to indicate things. Like I use different emojis of different color to indicate priority levels for my tests. And then finally, like just add an image that's pretty much applicable to everything. And then I also added some blank sections to create spacing. So yeah, here's how it looks. You can see the emojis here. I added the image, and then there's some white space you can see like in between tasks just to make everything more clear. And here's a short GIF of how my app works. Yeah, so as you can see here, the GIFs kind of started in the middle, but the user can just like click on the time and the date picker to create custom values. And then when the user hit create, the task is created, but it's like not immediately visible because it only fetches from the database like when we click on the home. So yeah, this is the beginning of the GIF again. So let's talk a little bit about like what I learned from this from building this app and overall from the course and what I can improve. If I have more time and resources, like how I would improve upon my app is to after the user create those tasks, we can also remind user to do tasks in the messages. For example, like if I created a task for 10 p.m., maybe the app can message like users 10 minutes beforehand to remind the user to do the task, which make the app like more interactive and interesting. And then another feature that I have in mind is just invite different users to join in on tasks because often Slack is used in the team setting, so it makes sense for like different users to be able to join in. And actually, I learned a lot from building this app and also from the overall course. The structure of the Slack API is really interesting to me. Because like as you said, I got this like part of the information from the Slack API. So it says like don't call us, we'll call you. Because like Slack is really the Slack apps are really user driven. So a lot of times like nothing happens until like the user like clicks something open or um like sends a message. So it's really driven by so the app really listens to like listens for user events and then respond to them. And it's just a different way of designing the app when everything is based on user interaction. Yeah, compared to other apps that I've built. And then another interesting part is using block kits. I'm not super familiar with any like UI kits like that, so it was really interesting for me to learn like how you can use like a ready-made UI kit and make it your own and customize it. And finally, it was my first time using the JSON local database. So it was just really interesting for me to see how you can store data in such a lightweight format. So and even if I were to build like a more complex app later on, um, it just makes sense for you to like test out the idea in a simple way without worrying too much about like how the database is like architectured. Yeah, and that's it for my project. Thank you so much for the instructor Fifi and Bo, and also for the Slack engineers who showed us how everything works, and for my mentor Cameron. Yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone for listening.
Awesome. Great job, Rebecca. That was super cool.
Yeah.
So, if anyone is watching and is interested in making your own Slack app or participating in this bootcamp, all the content is open source online on our repo, which is bitprj/bitcamp right now. And we are also hosting a summer cohort coming up soon. So if you want to apply for that, go to bitproject.org/apply, and you can make a super cool project like Rebecca. Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Fifi?
Yeah. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And thank you, Rebecca, for demonstrating exactly what we aim to teach with this bootcamp.
Thank you, everyone.